Good evening. It is my duty here this evening to give you a short devotional thought. And that thought is entitled Control Freak. The scripture reading is taken from Luke chapter 12, verses 25 to 26, and it reads, Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And if worry can accomplish a little thing like that, what's the use of worrying over bigger things? Chances are you know someone who is a control freak, and that is a person determined to micromanage every detail of life at home, at work, and at church. Though mothers aren't the only ones who can fall into the control trap, I think we are more prone to it because of the degree of control we need to exercise when our children are young. Some of us get stuck there, treating grown children as though they are 2-year-olds who need to be protected lest they dart into the path of an oncoming car. Little coincidence, perhaps, that mother can be transformed into quite another word simply by adding an S at the beginning. Of course, some amount of control is necessary to every life. But outsized attempts at control are pathological, rooted more in anxiety than any kind of lust for power. Being a control freak leads to only frustration and difficulty, because even when our attempts at control are successful, we have probably alienated someone in the process. What's more, if we have a controlling style of relating to life, we may reach a point of no return where the habit gets calcified and is nearly impossible to break. One of my close friends has a mother who typifies this pattern. Suffering from dementia, she is still trying to control everything, though now she does it through a fog of confusion, without the ability to make sound decisions. This makes the family efforts to care for her much more difficult. How do you know if you're even the controlling type? Just watch the way people respond to you, particularly members of your close family. They'll let you know. And if you find that the label control freak does apply, don't brush it off as though it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Think, instead, of what you might be missing because of your style of responding to life. Makes it hard for God to care for you. Ask Him for the grace to recognize when you are trying to exercise more control than you should. Stop now before it is too late. And there's a little prayer at the end. Lord, please show me if I am trying to control too much in my world. Help me instead to learn how to rest in your care. Amen.
All right, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome those that are here with us in person and also those that are online. I hope you are blessed with this evening's proceedings. We'll be examining the topic recreation or recreation. Life has become very fast-paced and hectic. There are deadlines to be met, school assignments to be submitted, and work commitments to be fulfilled. The stresses of life can overtake and destroy us if we do not find time for recreation. This evening, we will seek to answer these questions. What is recreation? Why is it important? What is amusement? Is there a difference between recreation and recreation? And are there forms of recreation that are inappropriate? What guidelines can we establish for recreation? All right, so the objectives for today are we will define the term recreation, discuss the importance of recreation, and compare the concepts of recreation and amusement. Next slide. All right, so the first question is what is recreation? Yes?
Good evening, church. I think for me, recreation is a part of relaxation, a part of unwinding from life stressful behaviors, a part of taking a little time out to do something that you enjoy, whether it's a garden or planting a plant or something that makes you feel good and brings relaxation to from takes you away from your everyday stressful program that you can build a different mindset where you can be into yourself and maybe into God and something that's natural that you can absorb and adapt to.
Anybody else?
I think Brother Martin pretty much touched on it. I was thinking in terms of an activity that at the end of it, you are in a better position than you were before in terms of refreshing and rejuvenation, etc. You're not worse, you're in a better position from that activity.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you everybody for answering. All right, so next slide. All right, so the definition of recreation, according to Merriam-Webster, is a refreshment of strength and spirits after work. And according to Cambridge, is a way of enjoying yourself when you are not working. Something done for pleasure or to relax. Next slide. Why is recreation important? Are you wait for the microphone? Joyce.
I was saying that without recreation, we will drop down. So we have to have some sort of activity to keep us. Like me, I be sweeping the whole day. Every little thing I see in the house, that is recreation too, you know. And at night, I'm so tired as though like I went out working, but it's good for me. And I also walk. That is recreation as well.
All right, thank you, Sister Joyce. Anybody else?
I would say that recreation is important. God made us um, versatile and dynamic, I guess you could say, and we need to have different aspects of life for balance. We have the spiritual, you have the physical, we go to work and do all the other things, and we also need that aspect for balance. Like other people said, for relaxation, rejuvenation, and all of that.
Thank you.
I can't think of any at the moment, but I am certain that there's some principle or some reference in the Bible that makes reference to recreation. Because I don't think that God leaves anything to chance. We know about the spiritual, we know about work. I can't think of any recreation, but if we search, I'm sure we'll find some principle in the Bible in terms of the importance of recreation, a break from the normal routine of life. Maybe you would, or somebody can enlighten me in terms of some Bible reference found in the scriptures.
All right.
I think that recreation is a part of life that we all need. Because of the chemical components in our brains, we need to relax from, take a mortar that is burning all the time. It burns and it will wear itself out. Recreation brings that balance of laughter, joy, fulfillment, setting aside a place for you to recede to so that you can regroup yourself again mentally and physically so that you can be a more holistic person and think about the positive and the negatives and weigh things in the right proportions so that you can develop mentally, physically, and strengthen your interaction with God and the Holy Spirit. Recreation helps make you unique or helps make you a more balanced and well-rounded person.
All right. Thank you very much, Brother Martin. Anybody else before we move on? All right, wait for the microphone.
Matthew 6:31, the sister is saying that Jesus told the guys to come apart and rest well, it was take a break from the routine.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, so moving on. Next slide. The importance of recreation. To refresh our spirits and invigorate our bodies. Recreation is needful to those who are engaged in physical labor and is still more essential for those whose labor is principally mental. All right, next slide. Is there a difference between recreation and amusement? All right, wait for microphone.
Usually the two words are used interchangeably, but when we examine what we would have just said, to me amusement is just purely for pleasure, whereas recreation should have a positive effect, or does have a positive effect on the body. As we said, it's relaxing, rejuvenating, it improves our health. So as I said, that is the difference between recreation and amusement. Recreation has a positive effect on our bodies, whereas amusement is just purely for pleasure, in my opinion.
All right, thank you very much, Sister Karima. Brother Martin?
I would say amusement can take different forms. And you can be amused by something, but not fully relaxed or being into it because you're just amused by the taking place of it, like a merry-go-round or what's not, and you're into it, what's not. But recreation is more like, okay, this is what I really want to do. This is what I find time to kick back and to relax, even if it's just reading a book. But you're relaxed and you're interested in the book because of the title, because of how the story goes in it. But amusement is when, okay, the brain is stimulated, okay, I'm amused by this, this is new to me, and you think, but after that amusement can become dull. So you have to look for another amusement, but recreation is something that you always want to go back to. After work, after a session or something, you want to have some refreshments outside after a tent session in church is recreation.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, so next slide. All right, so the difference between recreation and amusement. Recreation, when true to its name, tends to strengthen and build up. Calling us aside from our ordinary cares and occupations, it affords refreshment for mind and body, and thus enables us to return with new vigor to the earnest work of life. Amusement, on the other hand, is sought for the sake of pleasure and is often carried to excess. It absorbs the energies that are required for useful work and thus proves a hindrance to life's true success. Next slide. What are some activities used for recreational purposes?
Some examples I could think of would be things like hikes, picnics, some things that we normally do at church, as a church. I don't know, playing sports, volleyball, those kind of things, like how we have groups from church playing on the beach, going for walks, exercising, those kind of things are recreational to me. Well, just a few.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else?
Yeah, we all do lots of things for recreation: cricket, swimming, gardening, tending to our pets, whatever. Something that we love that we're trying to do. Something is say, okay, it's time to get to this and get a good feeling from doing it and enjoying it, and that comes to recreation.
All right, thank you very much, Karima and Brother Martin. Anybody else? All right, so next slide. Some of the most popular amusements, such as football and boxing, have become schools of brutality. They are developing the same characteristics as did the games of ancient Rome: the love of domination, the pride in mere brutal force, the reckless disregard of life, are exerting upon the youth a power to demoralize that is appalling. Other athletic games, though not so brutalizing, are scarcely less objectionable because of the excess to which they are carried. They stimulate the love of pleasure and excitement, thus fostering a distaste for useful labor. What are some principles and guidelines for recreation?
Now, I want to ask a question based on what Karima said on the slide that Jeremy had before. Could you go back to the other slide? The one before, because Brother Martin mentioned cricket and Karima mentioned sports, And we know that that's one of the things that young persons generally love: sports, football, and people might not necessarily get involved in boxing, but sports, whether it's volleyball, cricket, all the different sports. My question is, what is the guideline? Would they fall under recreation or amusement? Going back to what was said, looking at the principle that was mentioned here in terms of examining it. Do we see these, that's the first question is, do these fall under the category of amusement or recreation? That's the first question.
It's competition. Depends on the basis that it's taking place under. When it's competition, it becomes you must win to be acknowledged system. When it is just we're playing a game out in the car park just for the sport of playing the game, it is recreation. It is for fun. It is the word is the competitive aspect is pulled away to learn. But when you're reaching to play for the West Indies or play for something else, then you have that drive that you want to be better than anyone else, and you do whatever you need to achieve that status. So when you take away the prize element from it, it can become recreational. There's some people that keeps a dog, and to take their dog from them to not to take that dog for a walk in the morning, it's like taking away a part of their life, because they love to walk that dog, they love to see what he do, they love to watch his characteristics, and that is also recreational for them. Yeah, it has nothing to do with competition. But then there's a dog show. When you have the best dog at the dog show, it is competition.
Okay, Brother Martin introduced a different element. He introduced the element of competition. So the question that we want to look at, and Brother Martin also raised the point, when it is for just friendly pleasure, a friendly match, whether it's cricket or football, it is okay. But tell me if I'm interpreting you correctly, but when that element of competition is introduced, then it introduces a different element. Am I interpreting you correctly? Okay, yeah, go ahead, Karima.
I was saying that I think that they could fall under both categories depending on how it's played and what's done in these particular activities. Like we said before, the football, the cricket, the volleyball, all those things, they're they're good forms of exercise, because I'm sure after running up and down the field, you see the young fellas sweating and they look invigorated and stuff like that. I think it's a good form of exercise, good form of healthy competition, but where it will become, where the line will be drawn is when it starts to get aggressive and it's just about the only thing, the only focus is winning, to the point where, as I said, you become aggressive and violent and stuff like that, but it doesn't have to be that way. I think that they're good forms of exercise and, healthy competition between persons and just, fun, just good fun.
Okay, so another question following on that one, is the element of competition healthy? Where a person, I see Brother John smiling if he wants to respond. But is the element of competition healthy? The whole spirit of domination of the other person, who's better, who's first, who's the better, is that healthy? Can it be healthy at any point?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
To me, competition is a part of life. There will always be somebody who's better at something than somebody else. That's just the way life is in all aspects at work, even at probably in church too. In all aspects of life, competition, we can't get rid of it. So once, as I said, it doesn't become aggressive, where in some games you see people pushing down other people and to the point where they get injured and break a leg or whatever, and then they cursing one another and putting down each other. I don't agree with that part, but I don't see anything wrong with healthy competition.
Okay, any other thoughts?
Yeah, competition is healthy. Once you keep it under, it means that, okay, I'm not going overboard. If I have limitations, I can stay within my limitations. What I'm saying by limitations of 7 millimeter, because some person is better at you than tennis or weightlifting, it doesn't mean that, okay, I'm going to like go and take steroids to harm my body now so I can lift a little more weight than you. That is like putting God out of the picture, because maybe from your build and from your physical genetics, the person is a more physical person than you. So you stay within your limitations and enjoy it. When you're tired, you're tired. I mean, some people walk till their calves hurt. Some people walk less than them and they don't have that reaction. So you work within your limitations and you enjoy it. And competition is healthy because sometimes it brings you up to the peak that, okay, I was doing this before, but now I'm doing a little more. So competition is healthy.
Okay, any other thoughts? Sister Sharian, you want to share your thoughts?
If I'm good at football and I could play for, or even running, if I am a good athlete and I could run and I win a gold medal and I come first all the time and I get money, there's nothing wrong with that. So competition, nothing is wrong with competing. It is if when you are competing, you do things to win, like you try to mess with other people, you become, vain, all these things. If competition then becomes your life, that the principles of God now are not in your life, then there's a difference. But there's nothing wrong with competing. There's nothing wrong with coming first, because somebody got to come first and somebody got to come last. That's the reality of the situation. So, but recreational is different, because you might be competing for a purpose. Even the Bible talk about running the race. You competing for a reason. But when you have recreation now, that is a time where you doing something to relax. Like me, I just cycle, not on the road. I do spin biking. And that is relaxing to me. Some people, it may be hard work, but I like to cycle. I enjoy it, so I do it. It's a form of exercise, but it's also fun and relaxing. And when I get off my bicycle, I have a boost of energy. I feel happy. I feel good. So it all depends on what you see as enjoyment. For some people, enjoyment is sleeping. For some people, enjoyment is going in the garden. Mine is cycling. So there's a difference, and competing is good as well. Because if I could have run, I'd be running, making money.
Okay, Brother John, you have a question or comment?
I believe healthy competition is good because it helps you, a person strive for the best, right? But then it can also cause a person to hate and envy someone else if the person or the team or whoever is better than that individual.
That's a good point, because sometimes it can be divisive. Because you might have some persons, and you don't know all the, because sometimes you answer, who's your favorite sports person or person you emulate? Some persons say Messi. Some persons say Ronaldo. Some persons say Neymar, right? So it can be divisive in the sense that you have supporters for one team, football team, and you have another set of supporters for another football team. And then when it comes to that particular competition, you have the persons divided down the middle because they have these supporters or those supporters. So as you were saying, that it can actually bring out negative qualities if we do not keep them in check, because as the slide at the beginning talked about recreation in terms of making you feel invigorated, refreshed, and the ultimate goal is to prepare us for heaven. So anything that actually it shapes our character or helps us to have feelings of envy or hatred for another person, then as you were saying, those are things that we need to check, because we don't want to do anything that will reinforce those other characteristics. That's one thing in terms of sports. So we look at the whole thing is if it's something that causes you to develop, strengthens your body, invigorates your mind. That's the principle that we looked at. Karima, you mentioned sports. That's one thing that persons do for recreation. Brother Martin is saying music. What about music?
Sing away my life to something that I really love. So there's different things that people do for recreation. Sometimes you hear a good song, a gospel, a ballad, even if it's a song that has been played by some person. And if you can sit down and you can equalize and put the bass and the heights together, and you can put your own voice in there, like he has a set that he can do what it is. That's recreation. There's nothing more pleasing and probably more better than because it's something that he likes. You know what I mean? So it gives him that sense of like, yes, getting into it. It's like being right in the middle of the game. Being right there in the studio when the person is producing, it brings you to that place. When we come here to praise God, and we praising God with our heart, it brings us to that place where we give worship to God truly from our hearts, and it brings us right in the center of what he wants us to be.
Okay, because I guess, as we said, we want to look at the principle of amusement and the principle of recreation. We were talking about the music. As we were saying, doing things that are uplifting or that give glory to God as it relates to the music. Anybody else as it relates to other forms of recreation? What makes the difference between, we had touched on it lately, what makes the difference between whether it's recreation or recreation? What makes the difference? What's the dividing line? When does recreation or recreation in its truest sense become recreation, where we actually it has a negative impact?
I would say one of the factors that could cause recreation to become recreation is if it's carried to excess. I think everything should be, it's all about balance. Even good things can be carried to excess, as I think he would have mentioned in one of the readings. So if that's all that consumes us and we spend a lot of time on that particular activity to the detriment of others, that can be one of the factors that lead to it becoming recreation.
Okay, so one principle you mentioned is if it's carried to excess. Any others?
When we take God and the rationality out of it, and it becomes obsession or it becomes too vain, then it becomes what God doesn't want us to do. He wants us, like Karima said, he wants us to have balance. He wants us to have a equilibrium of things so that we can truly access although we love something and it amuses us and it makes us feel, the endorphins on our brain goes off like what Sherry said just now. When she gets off the bicycle, how she feels, it's just like a run a race and he's won it or he's done good in it. Yeah, and that message goes off in your brain. I've done good. That chemical that helps invigorate you when you try to get that response every time. That means that you must never lose. And you go after that certain response all the time. You know that okay, something is wrong because I'm getting gratified. Don't matter what I'm getting pulled towards this, and nothing else is in my way. There's nothing else that I would not do to get it. It becomes an obsession. But you have to have a balance where you'll have some time for God, you'll have some time for work, you'll have some time for your pets, you'll have some time for your plants, and you'll have some time for yourself to get a balance in life.
Okay, any other points before I answer my next question?
I was thinking that as Christians, everything we do is to bring us closer to God. And so at the end of recreation, if we are not closer to God or we are not pleased with our behaviors after, then it moves from the element of being recreation, which is to bring us closer to God and to rejuvenate us, and it puts us in a different realm altogether.
Okay, I guess as an excellent point, because everything we do should glorify God. Because going back to the point of one of the key things that when you have, one thing that comes to mind is when you have the sports, at the end of it, you should make sure that persons, as you were saying, don't end up being, and I think that point came out earlier, that's one of the things where you find persons get most agitated or upset when things don't actually go the way they should. So as you were saying that, we have to make sure that God is glorified in everything we do or say. Now, one other activity I will put out there where persons usually use for recreation is going to the cinema. I know that I'm throwing it out there for discussion because we're looking at recreation, recreation, or amusement. And you said that recreation is for rejuvenation, refreshment, refreshing your mind and body, where amusement is sought after for pleasure, for the sake of pleasure. So I want to put out there in terms of the cinema, that's one thing that you find that is a popular activity as it relates to recreation. I see our AOA leader has the mic. Are you responding to that question, Brother Colton? Okay, so we're looking at a form of recreation. We looked at sports. We established that anything we do must bring honor to God. It must not be dissipating. It shouldn't destroy our love for God, love for the things of God, love for devotion. It shouldn't cause us to be unchristian in our bearing. And it should always bring us closer to God. So one of the things we're looking at is in terms of one of the forms of recreation that persons pursue is going to the cinema or theater. That's one thing that you find that a lot of persons, I remember there was a discussion that was a while back, but it's one that never ceases to, never grows dim, I should put it that way. Right, so that is that one, would we say that that falls under the category of recreation or recreation?
That's a good one. I know there's one that the young people have always had a question about in terms of the whole cinema going thing. Before I give my answer, I would like to hear from some of the older ones, because normally we would hear objection from the older ones in terms of the whole cinema going thing being sinful or being wrong totally for us. So I just wanted, before I give my answer, I wanted to hear some of the older persons have to say in terms of their thoughts about that. Should we be doing it or should we not be doing it as a form of recreation or amusement?
Right. Because why I think this topic is important, because before we know for sure, Adventists never really got involved in competitive sports. That's something that we never really used to do before, but you find that it's more so happening now than before. So that's where we examine the forms of recreation so that we can actually have established a guideline as it relates to our choices of recreation.
In regards to,
Oh, Brother Martin, go ahead, sorry.
in regards to cinema and movie, can be very enlightening, and it still can be very dangerous too. Because of what we put our eyes to see and our minds perceive. We must remember that the movie industry is a billion-dollar industry that has a lot of forms, creations behind it. Even went as far as to create the movie Jesus Christ Superstar. Then they create the movies like Hellboy. The last movie they created and spent lots of money on was Lucifer. And I mean, like, I just drawn these movies up so that you have to really be defined on what you want to gaze upon and what you want to internalize. There have been good movies like Sidney Poitier to Serve with Love. That part in it makes you cry and wonder, okay, these things really happening. Like people really point young people in the right direction. So they're good movies and they're bad movies. But you have to take out what you want to watch from the movies and what you want to internalize or what you want to have in your home viewing for your children to view, what you want to view and think about. There's movies like The Cross and The Shadow, all kind of different movies, and they spend billions of dollars to make these movies because these movies can get into your mind. If your mind is not sound, they can get you to believe in all sorts of things that are possible that are not even relevant with God.
Sincere is 15, and she didn't get to the question yet of why Adventists don't go to the cinema. I guess it don't come in her mind because she's an introvert and prefer to be home at this time. But I don't even know. I still praying about that because what to say, you cannot say now that the cinema is somewhere bad like before. One time, in my time, when you go to the Globe Cinema, you will have people smoking marijuana, cursing, and sometimes they were slipping a drink in there. And so the atmosphere was different. But now, you have, put it name now, the one down St. James, Lime Grove, and even the one at Sheridan Center, where they have a lot of rules and regulations. So you can't smoke, you can't drink, no abusive language, and some of the pictures that they show in the cinema, you can see on Netflix, the stick, wherever the stick is, I can't really, the Fire Stick. Once you have cable, there are a lot of things that you expose your children to once you have a television. So no longer can we as Adventists say to our children, you cannot go to the cinema because of what it is showing. Or you can't even use the environment. And if you have young people, like some of my young people at church, they're going to tell you, there's nowhere in the Bible that say that you cannot go to the cinema. Show me the Bible text that say I can't go to the cinema. And the reality is, we cannot come up with nothing in the Bible that say we can't go to the cinema. What Martin said is true. We have to censor what we watch, even in our homes. No, true, if you want to go to the cinema, because you could get one of big TVs. A lot of people have that. And invite their friends, have popcorn and whatever. So the cinema for young people really is just about socializing and learning. That's all about. It's not about the picture. It's getting together and learning. So, yeah, and there's something to don't watch the picture. So the movies nowadays, going in the cinema nowadays, I don't even know what to say about that, because if you go in the theater to watch a picture that is of good morals, and they have sometimes a good moral picture that you can watch, well, you could tell my daughter, well, you can't go because of the environment. Can't tell she so. So my thing is now, I would say to the young people, is that you gotta be careful of what example you are setting to people. That's the best I can say to her. And let God be your guide. I would prefer you not to go because I don't go. But I can't tell her that there's nothing in the Bible that tell her that she can't go to the cinema. So I don't even know if I pose with a question, she come and tell me one day, Mommy, I want to go in, what name? Line Grove. I got Line Grove for my, oh, that's another thing. Your children could tell I got Line Grove for my friends. And go Line Grove and end up in the cinema. That is a real good question. So I probably, somebody else who more spiritual than me could probably give me guidance on that. But I think that really and truly watching a movie can be very relaxing, and you just got to censor what type of movie you watch. So you got to look at, if the movie showing something that you don't believe in, then that's another story. Like if I say sincere watching something, I would sit down and watch it, and I said, I would say, but sincere, this man think that he's God. Will you watch that? Then she switch it. So whenever I see something in it that goes against what I believe, I just point it out because she might not recognize it. She might thinking, seeing it as just something. So then I point it out. So then she switch it. So it all depends.
Okay, anybody else?
I'm not seeing any of the other older ones seeing anything, but as a young person, this one has been question in my mind because I know coming up we've heard young people should not go to the cinema. We've even had AOA discussions on this. But when I did I don't think I did a very extensive research, but when I read messages to young people and I was reading the passage on cinema going and she was talking about back then, the whole environment, as Sherry said, it was rowdy and very unchristian, cursing and drinking and a lot of rowdy behavior. That was the main reason, or one of the main reasons why cinema going was forbidden. But no, as she said, the cinema is nowhere near what it was back then. No, if I'm not sure how many people have been to Olympus or Lime Grove or even to the drive-in, is nowhere near what was described in the book. It's a very controlled atmosphere, a lot of security guards, and you can't do certain things or smoke or any of those types of behaviors. And then the only factor left then is what was actually shown on the screen. So what I would normally do if I'm going, I would look at the schedule and see what's being shown. If it's something that I don't believe in or something that goes against what we teach, then I wouldn't watch it. So I think, as she said, it all comes down to the picture that's being shown, what it is that we're watching. Because some of the older ones will say, oh, we shouldn't be going to the cinema, but some of the same ones might be at home watching Days of Our Lives and all these other things that the older people like. So the only difference is location. So then my point is that based on my understanding of what I've researched, the only thing we have to be considerate of is what we're going to watch. Be very, very careful of the things that we're putting in front of our minds. I know of the text that talks about whatever is true, whatever is noble. I can't remember the rest of the text, but yeah, pretty much we have to be careful of what we're watching. Once it contains any witchcraft or spiritualism, any vulgar behavior, then we know offhand or right up that we're not supposed to watch those kind of things. But if it's something wholesome, something that will make you laugh, something just nice and mellow, then I don't see any issue with that per se. But that's just how I see it as a young person.
Okay, thank you for those who mentioned already. Anybody else? Vincent?
Wow. What I would say is that I find more often than not, in fact, let me put it this way. Morals and values and those virtues that we talk about as Christians, they don't really sell, What is sell and make a lot of money as far as movies is concerned is sex, violence, and all the things that most of the time come with movies. And, sorry? Well, yeah, most of the time. And I find that there's a trend now. I don't always, sometimes I see from the clips and stuff, I find there's a trend now where you see more and more of a different type of lifestyle being brought into movies. And to me, that is a very, very, very serious thing because we're being taught to be desensitized to these things and so that over time they become normal. It's becoming more and more and more so. So that it can become more and more difficult. And not we said, Sherry, because there are times when we would watch or try to find Christian movies and stuff. But those are very, relatively speaking, few and far between. And really and truly, there are principles in the Bible that govern what we behold. That familiar text in Philippians is one: whatsoever things are true, honest, of good report, etc., etc. Think on these things. Another one: I will set no wicked thing before my eye. So we have to be very careful of the things that we take in, because they, excuse me, ultimately they will impact on our morals, our principles, our worldview. I know that, some people might consider it a little break from normal routine, but you have to be very, very, as was said before, you have to be very, very careful in what you allow your mind to take in. So the point is that there are principles that we can use to guide us in what we behold. As Kramer said, once it's something that, once it refreshes you and it teaches morals and those good things, no problem. But more often than not, a lot of sex and violence and other things that we don't believe in. That is it.
Anyone else? Brother Martin? Brother Martin, you have a question?
In different settings and different churches, some places have movie nights. If we as Adventists had to have a movie night, we would have to search really hard to find the kind of pictures that are entertaining, maybe some comedy, and we would have to sense to them that you will want to come and see something holistic, something edifying, and something not outside the line of God that will be relaxing to, and that you will gain something from. So, what your husband just said, most of the movies nowadays, they have violence, they have sex, they have different things. So you have to pull down a whole list, and then you'll have to search diligently for a movie or a picture that you can watch holistically that wouldn't cloud your mind or your judgment or take you away to that place. For me, sharing Harry Potter, I would break up the TV. Because I don't want to see Harry Potter and the things that he's been doing. My brother had a picture he used to watch with 3 angels that will come and do spells over the book. I don't watch it. I'm going to tell you, you're watching this beer rubbish. You know what I mean? I don't watch those kind of things. I will watch something National Geographic. I will watch something, a holistic picture of young people doing something in a science or real one. I will watch a picture of a little kung fu or something. But I ain't going into them pictures that are going on the demonic side. I'm not going there.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, the lady on this. Okay, someone else over here first. Oh, Sister Joyce, and then the want to welcome you to our program this evening. Thank you for making your input. I should have done that before. Thanks for choosing Jackson this evening.
Okay, when my children were teenagers, I never heard them come home and say, Mommy, I want to go to the cinema. I know that they will know better than that, especially dealing with their father. But if they want to watch something, we used to go and get a tape, and it will be a family sitting down together and watching. But anything outside the family, it was a no-no. And I always say, they come and say to Mommy, have some friends, and they're saying they're having a movie night. I said, well, let them come to our house and do the movie night, right? So that we will see what they're watching and if it is right to watch what they're watching. So my thing is, I've never had those opportunities. I used to hear my sisters and say, oh, they're going to the cinema, but I was never that sort of person to be running that sort of way. Even before I became an Adventist, I was never that sort of. I had parties, but not movies, and they're watching a lot of strippiness. No, not Joyce.
Okay.
for a young person, going to the theater, the lady said that when her daughter was watching something, she was able to tell her, well, that thing was not something that she should be, whether it be spiritualism, homosexuality is a big thing that they push through the Hollywood now. Even so, if you go to the theater, and coming back to the point that we do have stewardship to worry about as well, so being a Christian is very holistic. So when you spend your money and you go to the theater and it's something that has elements that are against your religion, you would have spent money on something that didn't bring you closer to God. And so that's one of the things that you have to consider when you go to the theater. But the question would be now for people who love the cricket, who spend their money to go to cricket in an environment that is even worse than the theater. And we don't see that as something being frowned upon because the elderly folk love the cricket, so they'll go to the one-day matches. But the music at one-day matches, the drinking, the cussing, the quarreling, the bad spirit, that's some place that's even worse than going to the theater now. So I guess it's not as bad as cricket, but then the element of you spending your money and then it is spent on a movie that doesn't bring you closer to God at the end of the day, it would be time wasted and money wasted. So those are the things you have to consider when you go to spend your money ultimately.
Okay. Anyone else? You look at the element of the younger persons, the... Pardon me? Okay. There's someone else in the back question that you were going to?
No, I was wondering, Rico wants to say something. But he said no. Kenny Cole, sorry.
You wanted to say something?
Donna, is you? Sister Donna? Is you? Is you want to say something? Okay.
Okay, coming back to analyze all that we've said so far. What is the purpose of our lives? What should be the focus of our lives? Because we looked at Jeremy looked initially at the purpose of recreation to recreate us for rejuvenation. And my question is, at this point in Earth's history, what are some of the things that because looking at what our sister just said and all that we've said before, is preparation for the kingdom of God form us in our minds, in our choice of recreational practices? My question to the congregation is the choice when we sit down or walk or wherever to do what we do for recreation, is glorifying God form us in the minds of individuals? Would you say that? Wait for the mic, wait for the mic.
I said, when I get on my bicycle, I don't be thinking about this is glorifying God. I get on my bicycle and think this is exercise for me, this thing I want to do, and I want to make myself happy. And if I'm happy, God will be happy too. I don't be moving miserable. So when I sit down and watch a picture, I don't sit down and think this is glorifying God. I'm being realistic. I sit down and I turn on my TV and say, this is downtime for me. And I want to think, let me watch TV. Because with a TV, you don't have to think. So when I want to think, I watch TV. Good. And when I sit down and I watch a picture, this is when God may come in my head. If I watch a picture and it's going very good, and I to episode 20, and everything going good, and then somebody come in the picture that happy now, I got to start watching the picture so I don't know at the end. So that's when God is coming. I say, well, what is this foolishness? So I don't watch that. If I watching a picture and it starts out good, they're happy, you know, gear happy. The gear. They're happy. So if I'm watching a picture and I recognize, but I I read the subtitles. I have Netflix, so I read the subtitles first. And if I see it says, and it's give age appropriate, that's the good thing about Netflix, it's give age appropriate, so it says 16 plus. So I know anything about 16 plus may have in something questionable. So when I read the thing and it says abusive language, I say no. Next, romance, happy feeling, I say good, let me watch this. So that's how I censor things. So I bring my principles, but reality is, and anybody said everything to do with the temple of God, I know the 10 Eloise. Because reality is, when you sit down and think about doing something, you don't be thinking that this glorifying God. You don't, well, for me, I don't think of that. No, I do things to glorify God. When I pray, when I worship, if I got family worship, and I do my devotional time. Not that God separate from my life in that, but you just do things naturally. So you don't sit down and say to yourself, this glorifying God, or it's not glorifying God. I get to a point in my life where I know there's certain things that I should not do, so I know that this will not be glorifying God. So I don't have to worry with that. There's certain things I know, and when I do something that I should not do, if you're in tune with God, the Holy Spirit just come and he just make you feel guilty. So anytime I start to feel guilty about something, and I know that I sin against my conscience, it done. So that's how I live my life. That's me, honesty. I don't know the buyouts.
Okay, before you go on though, because the first activity you mentioned in terms of the cycling, based on the principles that we established earlier, that is invigorating, is actually helpful, as Brother Martin was saying, it releases the endorphins and that's contributing to your overall health. So in terms of principles, that doesn't violate the principle of recreation because you're doing what God expects you to do, and at the end of it, you feel refreshed, you can go back to work, you can take up life's duties, and you can be productive, and you can impact on persons in a positive way. Now, the other part, and I think it was Brother Martin, raised a very important point that I always wonder about. Because if as a church we say to individuals, theater going is wrong or cinema going is wrong, but yet we have a movie night. Is that not necessarily the same thing? Because is it just a change of location that makes it wrong? If for example, you're looking at the scenario with a movie, suppose you have a movie that talks about the love of Christ, and that's shown in the cinema, and you take the same movie and show it at church, what's the difference between the two?
It's a big difference. There's a difference. You fellowshipping, the fellowship is different, Sherry. No. The whole congregation.
There's no difference because you bring in what is in the theater, in the church too. So there's no difference. If the cinema had, no, young people don't say, tell one to go to the cinema, go and tell one of the parents that Sherry said that go to the cinema. If the church bring a picture that showed in the cinema to church, what is different? The building and the people. In the cinema, you may have different people, but the atmosphere, there's no drinking, there's no smoking, there's no cursing, there's no sexual activity going on in front of you when you're trying to watch the picture. So the atmosphere is not really different. The only thing you do is one at church and one at the cinema. So that's why I say, in these times, it is very hard to convince young people that going to the cinema is wrong if the atmosphere is clean. So my thing now is not saying, don't go to the cinema. My thing now is focusing on character. My thing is teaching my child who she hanging out with, one, and the character that they have, and two, what you watch. So I want her to be at a point where when she look at something, she says, this is wrong because of what it is. That is like the same thing now with technology. I ask my young people this, if this is worshiping the dead, you know that technology now allows you to speak to dead people. Like say my grandmother dead. And it show on, I think it's CSI, one of them pictures, where a lady was killed and they were using this hologram to communicate with her, and they ended up solving her murder. Now in Korea, this woman, her daughter died, and what they did is they recreated the daughter, how she was at, when she died, she was 6 or 7, and what they did is they made the computer bring her to a stage how they think she will look at 16 and 17 and 18, and the woman was having a conversation with her. And then there was a funeral. Now this happened in the States as well. There's this funeral, and they had a lot of people at this funeral, and the people were asking the lady about her life, and the lady was telling them even about things that her children never knew. She was saying, and they were asking her about her thoughts, and as the woman was talking, and it felt like the woman was there. Now my question to my young people was this: do you see this as communicating with the dead? And you know what they said? No. You know why it is not, they're not communicating with the dead? They said, because it is technology. Now I had to bring it to their attention that even though it is technology, it goes against what the Bible says. So now we got a whole study about the death. So the thing is not the theater. It's not, you got to look at the environment, and if it's a good environment, good. Then you got to look at the content of what you are watching. So if we get our young people, or even older people, to see is the content that we are watching, then we accomplish our goal. But you could sit down and watch a good movie and laugh and enjoy yourself. Listen, you could even have a good karaoke and enjoy yourself in wholesome fun. And you don't have to be, and listen, I ain't advocating, got a lot of worldly friends. I don't have a lot of Christian friends. I know a lot of Christian people, but I don't have a lot of Christian friends. I find that most of my friends are, sorry to say, worldlians. I call them worldlians. But when we learn together, the atmosphere is not a bad atmosphere. So we don't go places that I should not go. And when we have fun, they don't be no cursing, no sex, no drinking, or whatever. Because I choose my friends. And we socialize, we do other things together. So we got to teach our young people about the principles of God. When we teach them the principles of God, then we won't have to worry about if they have proper recreation, they will make good decisions. That is my personal belief.
Okay, you were saying something, John? You want to say something? Okay, Joyce, you were saying something? Okay, but going back to what we were saying, I made the point because, and I'm glad Sister Sharian raised that point, because Satan will not come out right and destroy our defenses. And what has happened is that he has made things that can be detrimental to our spirituality seem attractive. Things like going out in nature, hiking, and doing positive things that build us up spiritually, you don't find a lot of persons finding that attractive. But the things like theater going and movie watching and things like that, that can actually eventually, because I guess they have the law of diminishing returns, and it can be addictive. When you get one, you want another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And when we look at it, a lot of time is spent in these things that do not necessarily draw us closer to God, because at the end of it, as was said earlier, the movie industry is not orchestrated by persons who are Christian. And you might find 90% of things, or even 80% of things that you might say, oh yeah, these are good morals, but in between that, you have things that are poisonous. So if I give you juice, and I say that this juice has poison in it, but it looks like juice, and you drink it, you will not know the difference. So I said that to say that even in the movies that we watch, because if you're not going to go to the cinema and watch a particular picture, then it cannot be acceptable in your home as well too. Looking at principle, because young persons think in absolutes. You're going to tell me that going to the cinema is wrong, but you're watching the same thing in your home. I think we need to be consistent, because as children of God, we know for sure that we have a witness. And as much as we might say, okay, it doesn't matter, people observe Seventh-day Adventists, and they know where we stand or where we should stand on a lot of things. And seeing a young person, Seventh-day Adventist, going into a cinema, whether it's watching National Geographic or whatever, persons on the outside will have an opinion. And as much as we might think that it is not important, our witness can be destroyed by the things that we do. So I would say to young persons, you might not see anything wrong with it. You might say, okay, this is a healthy picture, this is something positive. But at the end of the day, are you actually glorifying God by being in that location? Are you bringing a person closer to God? Is it for, as we said, in terms of cinema going, is it recreation or is it amusement? At the end of the day, am I brought closer to God? Is my spirituality strengthened? Because we're not just here for a good time. We're here at the end of the day to prepare our minds and our hearts to heaven. And probation is closing as we speak. So we don't know when our probation will close. So the activities we become involved in must necessarily bring us closer to God. It can't be just for a good time. It must, because everything we do impacts on our mind. And they go into our subconscious, whether they're positive or whether they're negative. That's just my supposition. Sister, yeah, go ahead.
If you remember this Bible text, there's a Bible text, or anybody else in church who know it, there's a Bible text that says something about, I know Paul said it, I put it in my own words, where it says that don't be a stumbling block. If something you're doing is not necessarily wrong, if you're doing something that's not wrong, huh? It's in Galatians. Right. But I know there's a text. It's Roman. I know there's a Bible text that says that to don't be a stumbling block. And that something might, and I say this to sincere, something may not necessarily be wrong, but because it caused another man to stumble, then don't do it. So that's the same thing with the cinema. If going to the cinema will cause someone else to stumble, do not do it. But we cannot, that's the principle that we should tell the young people. I get my answer. The principle we should tell the young people in not going to the cinema, rather than telling them they should not go, because we are in a generation now where they ask why. Gone are the days we could tell a young person, don't do something, and they say, all right, I come out here and you don't go to the cinema, so automatically as an Adventist, I don't go to the cinema. I come out as Adventist saying, you don't wear jewelry, and automatically I fall in line, don't wear jewelry. But there's a generation now that don't fall in line. You got to tell them why they're doing what they're doing and for what reason they are doing it. So that's the text that comes to my mind. I don't know if you remember it, but that text there is the principle.
You see, why I would pass, or why you say that we have to, this is even more so important now than before to draw the line and a black or white stand, is that when we go in the grays, you have a lot of problems. And even some of the movies that we watch, we got to get rid of. I would even be so bold as to say that. Persons might not necessarily agree with me, but when you look at the lifestyles of some of these actors and actresses, they might not necessarily reflect God, and some of the movies, as we said, go against what the principles of the Word of God. So to say, to use and Satan is deceit, as a master of deceit. So now he has said, okay, there's nothing wrong with the movies. The environment is good. There's no cursing. There's no smoking, so it's safe. But we know for sure that even in doing that, therein lies a danger, because when we become so familiar with one thing, it becomes a habit. And we have to guard the avenues to our soul. What we put in will eventually impact on our minds. And as you rightly said, Sister Sharianne, the whole thing of social media, the whole thing of technology, God is being put out of the minds of his people. And it's basically pleasure, fun, frolic. And it's not about necessarily doing things to spread the gospel, witnessing to persons, bringing persons to Christ, as that's not the focus of our attention. So I believe that whatever we do, we must recognize that a Christian life is not boring, as some young persons might come across it. We want to make it seem as though you can't do this or you can't do that. But when you really love the Lord and you get involved in wholesome things that do not destroy your faith, don't destroy your relationship with God, and don't destroy your character, it is very possible to do that in the age in which we live and still be happy doing it. I think you had a question, Karima, and Vincent had a question.
I was listening interestedly. Sister Sharian hit on something very powerful there just now in terms of this merge between technology and spiritualism. I was thinking, or my mind went to this whole, I'm not sure how many people have heard about it, this whole thing with metaverse. They're hearing a lot about it now, especially if you're on social media, where the whole idea is that you can live in a virtual world. You can go anywhere. You can be with your friends. You can even, people actually buy real estate in the virtual world. And maybe we can do a program on that, because it sounds good, but that's the reason why we need to explore these things. This whole metaverse thing, where you can leave this world and go into another world and be anything and be anybody, even a different sex, or that's something we need to examine. This whole metaverse thing, because it is being pushed as something positive and good, but then there are some people who are expressing concerns about it. And as you mentioned just now, how does it fit into our faith as Christians who are looking who are preparing to leave this world? Because it is I haven't researched thoroughly, but it is a big thing now, metaverse. A different world altogether.
Okay, thank you, Karima. And Brother Martin, sorry, Brother Martin, we're coming to you after Karima, and then we're winding down.
I have two questions. I know we're winding down, but Sharianne would have asked the question earlier in terms of how we would have spoken about what have we do glorifying God. She would have mentioned about the fact that she doesn't sit down and wonder if this particular activity will glorify God. So how do we determine whether whatever activities we are involved in glorify God? Must we sit down and study about is this whatever going to glorify God? Is he going to be happy when I do this particular thing? How do we determine that? And the second question is, what if the activity is not inherently bad, but it's not anything spiritual per se either? It doesn't have anything to do with God. Like, for example, going to a nice restaurant and having a meal with friends or by yourself or whatever, and also the things like going on a catamaran with friends, or there's this new thing, I don't know how many people are familiar with the off-road ferry thing where you go on the ATVs with a big group of people and race and stuff like that. Those kinds of things that aren't inherently bad, but they're not roller skating too, those kind of things. They're not inherently bad, but they're not spiritual per se either. Are those things that we should get involved in, or what do we have to say about those things?
Okay, to your first question, okay, you want to respond to her before I respond, Vincent?
If in a marriage, or you're in a marriage or a relationship, and you perceive that something you want something come to your mind to do, or some activity, wouldn't you consider how it affects your relationship or how it affects your spouse? There's a story that I heard a long time ago. This wife proposed to the husband that they want to have a open marriage where they can, go with other people. And they both went along at first, but then the husband realized that this isn't for him, but the wife went headlong. But eventually what happened? They went two different paths, and eventually they broke up. I use that analogy with our own relationship with the Lord. If you wanted, why would you want it when you consider how the other partner feels how it affect your partner or how it affects the relationship if there's something you want to do. And I use the same thing with our relationship with the Lord, because it's really a relationship. How would this thing affect my relationship with the Lord? Or do we take the position where it doesn't affect our relationship, so I can go and do it?
No, I say you're saying consider how the activity will affect our relationship with God before we do it. Yeah?
Yeah, I was responding to Karima's question by saying, yes, you need to stop and ask if everything you do impacts on your relationship with God, because Christianity or Seventh-day Adventism is not just a day, it is a lifestyle. It's not something we put on Sabbath and trek and come to church and look pretty. It impacts our recreation, it impacts our diet, it impacts our dress, it impacts everything we do. So, you want to say something, Mason?
Yeah, I just want to add. I remember a preacher was saying that, just to correct, I think I need to correct what he said. There's certain things, as Sharianne said, there's certain things that we know already based on experience that we shouldn't do, that will affect our relationship. Then there's some other things that, probably some new things that we come in contact with, that we want to get involved in, and we need to consider if it will affect my relationship, and if I should get involved.
Yeah.
There's certain things you know already, but then there are things that you need to, because I remember even in the Bible, how should I put it? To me, right? God is concerned with every detail of my life. He knows things that I don't know. He sees things ahead that I can't see. And I am realizing now, I am beginning to see that I need to be able to do that. I remember the scriptures, even with David. David was, when he was on the run from Saul, and even a simple thing like asking God, should I stay or should I go? God told him, I don't remember the exact response, but then David had further questions, and David went to God again and asked him if the people can give him up. God told him, yes, they can give you up. So I am saying, this is how I see it. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that God is concerned even about things that may seem unimportant. So we need to be able to find out if this is something that will affect my relationship.
Yeah, and to go back, I'm coming to you now, Brother Martin. I haven't forgotten you. To go back to your other question, Kramer, like things like roller skate and things like catamaran, we have general principles that we have already established in terms of recreation. If at the end of this activity, am I brought closer to God? Am I refreshed? Is it something that, as you said, the sister was saying in terms of stewardship, if it's something that you can afford, if it's something that benefits you on a general basis. So we have guidelines in other areas. God has given us general guidelines in terms of a restaurant, if it's something that you can afford, things like that. And this is not something that you're doing that is contrary to the principles that we established earlier. Are you coming back refreshed? Have you, at the end of it, violated your principles? If we look at the guidelines that were established earlier as it relates to recreation and amusement, then that gives us an idea of, should I get involved in these things? Does it glorify God? Does it compromise my health? At the end of it, am I refreshed? Am I prepared for the discharge of my duties? Am I brought closer to God? Those are general guidelines that we can have as the Bible outlines for things that are recreational, things that we can get involved in. And if we see God as just, I remember there was a story that said these persons were going on driving a car, and they told God that he could go in the trunk. And that car got into an accident, and the only part of that car was saved was the same trunk. We cannot compartmentalize God and say, okay, God, you just for Sabbath, but the rest of the week for me. Everything in our lives should be wrapped up and bound up. But we really have, as Vincent was using a good analogy of a marriage situation. If you are in love with the Lord, you're not going to say, okay, God, well, I just put you here, let me just do what I got to do and just pick you back up. Everything we do will glorify God because it's a natural outflowing of your relationship. It's not something you put on the side is something you do and you enjoy doing. Brother Martin, before we wrap up.
This probably is my last comment. I'm taking up from what Winston was saying. When David was running from Saul, David even went into the camp where he was the night and took his jar and took his javelin and did not take his life because David was listening to what God told him. We have to listen to what God tells us inside. We as Christians, like you just said, we cannot just have Sabbath for Sabbath and the rest of the week for us. Some people tell me, Martin, your life get dull. You just play gospel music. I don't think they know that I get up and search my Bible day in and day out, do my Bible studying, and look for other books and so on. Even read Jehovah's Witness magazines and compare so that, I can have like the truth of scriptures and scriptures divine. But when we look at outside our doors, even outside our doors of our homes, the enemy will be there. We have to assert ourselves that we always prepare to keep the enemy at bay, whether it's in movies, whether it's in sports, whether it's in just confusion, whether it's just being contention, whether it's being car racing and bikes running up and down the street. But if a little child is on the road, you have to take that little child and tell him, look, this is not the place for you to be, and this is not the manner for you to behave. And if you can speak to that child, God commands us that we should be light. Light means that we should observe his principles and we should show forth his principles in whatever we do in our lives. It doesn't make sense to go and do something that will give us gratification and satisfaction in the eyes of the whole world and we exalt God. We have to keep God most focused in what we do so that if he's using us, he'll be able to use us to any entirety that he wants to use us in. Because we've seen the world. We've seen what the world has to offer. We've seen every avenue and every threshold and battleground that the enemy will appear on and raise the battle. So we have to guard our hearts and minds, and we have to even guard our feet sometimes where we go, what we absorb, what we intake, and what we pursue. If we pursue the love of God in the March when we became baptized and say, Lord, I answer these 13 questions and I give myself to you, and you really mean it from your heart, every day you'll give yourself to the Lord. And when he tells you to help some person, even though what the pastor said today, even though they make you're not so inclined to help them because maybe of the mannerism, because you know what they think of you, but still God said, look, do like Matthew 5. Bless them that curse you. You help them anyway, because it's not you, it's God within you. So we have to be quite sure that our reward is in heaven, and we have to be quite sure that we keep in line, because the enemy will pull us to the right or to the left to make us miss the center where he's on the cross.
Okay, thank you, Brother Martin. Anyone else? Thank you so much. In the final analysis, we need to remember that Satan is like a roaring lion seeking to devour us. And in everything we do, we have to make sure that whatever we do, as we said Jeremy said at the beginning of the principles of recreation, it must rejuvenate us, because we can't be working, as Brother Martin said as well. We can't be working all the time. Those who use their brains, use their bodies, we need a break. We need something to refresh and invigorate us. So we just need to make sure that when we choose the activities for recreation, that they invigorate us, they bring us closer to God, they refresh us, and at the end of it, we are brought closer to our preparation for heaven. I remember when growing up in the church, we used to have our socials. And that's one thing we have gone away and fallen down the church. We don't in the church. I guess we had COVID, but the church was like a home, a community. You had the socials. Person went out together. They did things together, like Brother Colton is planning the picnic, which is a very good thing. And as a church, we need to do things like this more and provide outlets for our young persons. We need to have a community, not only a spiritual community, because we're not just spiritual beings, we're also social beings. So as a church, we need to look at going back to where we were before in terms of providing outlets, wholesome outlets. And the Master Guide and the Pathfinder, they have a lot of honors like stargazing, orienteering, Camp Cookery, all of those things. We have a whole lot of things that we can do as a church in terms of recreational activities, and even in our own sphere, as we said earlier, if you're going about your activities in a friendly manner, things to encourage one another. The thing is to build up, not to destroy each other, and to help each other into the kingdom, because as we look around the world, this world is wrapping up. Things are happening, and we can see that the end of this world is fast approaching. So let us, as we endeavor to prepare for heaven, just keep our minds focused, study the Word of God, because if we study the Word of God, God will reveal to us the things that are pleasing in His sight and the things that are not pleasing. So let us hold fast the profession of our faith, encourage each other in the faith, pray for, and with each other, because it's not easy. There will be a lot of attractions out there for the youth and for everybody else. So let us all press together as we prepare for God's kingdom. Jeremy, turn you back over.
All right, so in conclusion, we are here to benefit humanity and to be a blessing to society. From every source possible, we want to gather new courage, new strength, new power, that we may elevate our lives to purity and holiness, and not come down upon the low level of this world. We must choose activities that refresh our minds and bodies, choose activities that glorify God, and choose activities that prepare us to be useful in this life. We'll ask Brother Colton to pray for us. Ahem. That's all. Who's that for? Or we now have our closing song.
Let's all stand as we close off our AY program. I'm sure that we were all blessed by the discussion that we had. And we're going to close off with number 84 from the Advent Youth sing, I Shall See the King. I shall see the King where the angels sing. I shall see the King someday in the better land on the golden strand, and with him shall ever stay. In his glory I shall see the King, and forever endless praises sing. To us on Calvary Jesus died for me. I shall see the King someday in the land of song, in the glory throng, where there never comes a night. With my Lord once slain, I shall ever reign in the glory land of light. In his glory I shall see the King, and forever endless praises sing. Calvary Jesus died for me. I shall see the King someday. I shall see the King, all my tributes bring, and shall look upon